Now, while South Africa is a strategic trading partner of Asia, particularly so is the case with China. Now, the export to China was affected by COVID-19, as you would imagine, and this has affected trade volumes as ports were not fully operational in the year 2020 until 2021. So to revive the economy, as President Cyril Ramaphosa has pointed out, South Africa will have to increase its manufacturing capacity and also ensure that export volumes are increased. So for more on this, we cross live now to our SABC correspondent in Hong Kong, Richard Kimber. Richard, good morning. So since COVID-19, as indicated, trade volumes obviously affected and they decreased significantly. But can you just give us a sense of the trade volume between South Africa and China at the moment?
Yes, well, it's an important relationship for both countries. I mean, South Africa is the leading exporter to China of any African nation, and the amount of Chinese exports to South Africa have grown exponentially in the last 20 years by some 15% year on year. It's really a continued growth story as China continues to try to expand across the whole continent thanks to its very fast-growing Belt and Road Initiative, a massive economic cornerstone of China's intent to try and spread its economic and political influence across the rest of the world. So this is something that China is looking at, and because China, perhaps more so than most other countries in the world, has bounced back economically on a domestic level from the impacts of COVID-19, there is perhaps more potential, analysts say, for increasing that relationship with China than there might be for South Africa with many other countries around the world, which are still really struggling to recover from the impact of the pandemic. China, in contrast, bounced back with some 2.5% growth in 2020, while many other countries around the world were really at that stage only experiencing the beginning, the onset of what has become this massively impactful COVID-19 influence.
Now, Richard, the issue around the ports and Hong Kong, of course, looking at this also very closely, given those trade volumes between the two countries. But how has Hong Kong resolved the challenges of backlogs at the ports in South Africa?
It's been a major problem for Hong Kong, largely because the impact of the outbreak, especially the one currently happening here, has really taken over everything that's happening in daily life here. The ports in particular have been battered by this because there are so many social distancing measures, so many social gathering measures currently in place here in the city. All forms of business have effectively ground, not quite to a standstill, but to massively reduced volumes than that which they're experiencing before. Another major problem for trade between South Africa coming through Hong Kong is the very tight quarantine restrictions here, restricting anybody and in some cases any trade from passing through the city, which was of course a major conduit for trade from the Southern African Cape coming through to China as well. So I think what will happen if this continues to be the case in Hong Kong, and it looks like it will be for the next couple of months, is there'll be more pressure on global shippers to instead look to more directly ship to southern Chinese ports rather than continuing to use Hong Kong as an interface to southern China or to the Greater China region. And that's a concern for financial analysts here in the city of Hong Kong, because they can see that if this continues to be the case in Hong Kong with these types of strict quarantine and immigration and trading restrictions, that it can really undermine Hong Kong's reputation as a global finance hub, as more countries like South Africa are then effectively pressured to do more direct trade with the Chinese mainland rather than continuing to use Hong Kong as they may have traditionally done so.
And just a final question, Richard, with regard to what's happening in eastern Ukraine at the moment, just in terms of how things are viewed over in Hong Kong with regard to that situation and the immediate impact of that.
Well, certainly here, both the Beijing Foreign Ministry and the Hong Kong government, who tends to take a slightly quieter view on international affairs, but the Foreign Ministry in Beijing playing up its intent to try and frame this as an opportunity to push for more international diplomatic solutions. It often uses events happening far away from its local area in Asia as an opportunity to try and play up the idea that, unlike, for example, the United States, which it often paints as a global aggressor, it doesn't want to suggest in any way that it should get involved involved in sanctioning other countries, that it should interfere in other countries' political affairs. It's been speaking to the United Nations in recent days, leading calls for some kind of diplomatic negotiation between both Russia and NATO, and of course the United States playing up its role, as it likes to play itself, as an international interlocutor, a negotiator, if you like. That's largely because of the amount of victimization it paints itself as having suffered on the part of the United States' own trade and political criticisms in recent years. And it tries to use things like, for example, the Russian-Ukraine situation as an opportunity to try and paint itself as perhaps a global solution for these types of issues, rather than necessarily escalating the problem, as it often accuses the United States of doing so.
Well, thanks for that. Our correspondent in Hong Kong, Richard Kimber, speaking to us there.